So Mogoeng Mogoeng's term as Chief Justice ends today after 10 years as head of the judiciary. This makes him the country's longest serving Chief Justice. So let's discuss his legacy with Dan Mafora, who is a research officer at KSAG, and Chris Oxtoby to also discuss this. Chris Oxtoby, who is with the University of Cape Town. Let's talk about that legacy of the Chief Justice. Dan, let's start with you. Isn't it surprising that we don't have a farewell ceremony of sorts for the Chief Justice? Usually the Constitutional Court sits for such functions, and I know these are COVID times, but there's a way to do these things within acceptable, safe standards.
Absolutely. I think that the fact that the Chief Justice took long leave in May towards the end of his tenure may have something to do with that. And of course, as you mentioned, there is the fact of the pandemic, and those may be two reasons why or factors why the court isn't sitting to honor the Chief Justice. We don't actually know that they're not sitting or that they would sit at a later stage. But you'll remember as well that two other members of the court are also retiring today. And so we probably should expect something in the next coming weeks.
Yeah, I did ask someone in the Chief Justice's office what's going on, and I was told that the farewell event is still under consideration. For me, that was a bit suspicious, given that it's a usual thing that often happens. But they're saying it looks like they're still considering it, whether it will happen or not. Chris, what legacy does the Chief Justice leave behind? In what state do you think he leaves the judiciary? Obviously, it's faced a number of challenges, from attacks over the years to political and contentious cases that have come before the courts. The Constitutional Court, I think, recently dealt with a lot of first of its kind cases.
Yes, that's right. I mean, I think that the court and the judiciary as a whole is facing particularly challenging has faced particularly challenging circumstances over the last few months. And I must say, although this is only a small part of his legacy, I think the long leave that has been referred to has not helped that. I do think there has been something of a leadership vacuum, which has meant that the attacks that the judiciary has been facing over the last few months have not been countered as strongly as they were, for example, back in 2015, when the judiciary came under fire after the Al-Bashir case, and Chief Justice Mogoeng then spoke out very strongly in defense of the judiciary and of its constitutional role. And I think this points to a broader point, that the Chief Justice's legacy will be quite a complex one and quite a divided one to assess. I think one can certainly see positives in the standing up for the judiciary that we've mentioned, some of the jurisprudence, but I think there are also some issues which are concerns and are going to continue to be concerns in the future. How the Judicial Service Commission handles both judicial conduct matters and the appointment of judges being one very significant issue that's going to be on the desk of the new Chief Justice. So my short answer is a mixed legacy.
Yeah. Then what are the notable moments during his tenure that we will be speaking of in the years to come? I know people often think of the Nkandla ruling that he delivered, even though there was a unanimous judgment, but he delivered that. There have been some key judgments that he's penned, including some dissenting judgments as well.
Absolutely. So I think a few key moments will stand out, and most of them, of course, as Chris has just said, relate to his leadership of the judiciary through what was a very difficult time. The Al-Bashir movement, particularly, is what comes to mind immediately when you think about the legacy of the Chief Justice, the way that he marshaled the heads of court and said we have to defend our constitutional role as courts and as judges. And on the more jurisprudential front, obviously, there's the Nkandla judgment, there's the secret ballot case, and a few dissents in some of these more politically charged cases. Whether or not those were particularly good or particularly sound is a discussion, is a different discussion, but certainly he has made a mark and he has left behind cases and judgments that we can look on and reflect on their significance in our democracy.